obviously we had Segwit a few years ago, and then we've had Taproot. Is there another big update being discussed?
Yeah, I'm probably not the person for that question, but I think it's going to be Covenants.
More than I
am. Maybe.
Covenants.
I think the next, there's been a lot of attempts at addressing,
You should explain Covenants again. We covered it before.
I'm realizing I should probably go back and do that. So there's Covenants is like a broad term, and there's really several different use cases that I think are relevant and can be accomplished in different ways. And so that's kind of where the covenants discussion gets muddled by are we just doing covenants? We're doing these set of use cases, right? So there's a few things. There's I mentioned already this kind of concept of multi-party UTXO ownership, and how do we get to a world where multiple people can collaboratively own a UTXO and dynamically create lightning channels or do payments, but not all have to have their own separate set of UTXOs. And so that's one important thing where more flexibility in the Bitcoin script format can enable that much more efficiently, right? Where specifically where if we have a UTXO and the three of us have collaborative ownership of this and we each have some right to some portion of the balance of that, some balance within that UTXO, within that transaction output, then having the ability to say have that UTXO, but have the Bitcoin script in that UTXO restrict the exact format and the exact details of the next transactions. And you can't really directly do that in Bitcoin today. You can have a public key which has to sign the next transaction, obviously. I mean, that's how Bitcoin works. But the best you can really do then is you create a multi-sig 3 of 3, and then we pre-sign a transaction like Lightning, and then we store that transaction, and if we want to update it, we create a new one, but then we have to have some mechanism to revoke the old one. So it gets very complicated, and this one Lightning is very complicated. But if we can have that Bitcoin script format explicitly say the next transaction has to look exactly like this, or has to have exactly these things set, then that enables a lot more flexibility to do these kinds of protocols. Similarly, that goal of being able to restrict exactly what's set in the next transaction is useful for a lot of these kind of large custodial enterprises who have maybe potentially large hot wallets or certainly very large cold wallets, where they want to say okay, I have all this money in my cold wallet. If those private keys get hacked, even if those private keys get hacked, the next transaction that is created spending that money in my cold wallet must still pay to here, or must still
you can whitelist addresses,
right? Basically, yeah. And there's all kinds of variations on that design, but that kind of thing could be enforced on chain.
A predetermined set of rules for whatever the next transaction is,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it hops it to another address first,
right?
Which is predefined. So okay, because that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of, and there's a million variations of that. You could have pre-hops it to something, but then if then you have some additional time to cancel that and bring it to some other address. There's all kinds of different schemes people have for that, but potentially useful improvements to security of cold wallets. So there's all kinds of these kind of overlapping use cases for this fundamental concept of I want to restrict what the transaction spending this output looks like. But exactly what is available to those restrictions, and in a soft fork to Bitcoin, which things are you able to restrict and how are you able to restrict them, and yada yada, is a huge discussion, and has a ton of back and forth. There's Jeremy proposed his Opt-CTV design. There's several other designs. James is now working on this Opt-Vault stuff.
James
O'Byrne.
Okay. Jeremy went through a rough time with that.
He did. Yeah, I mean, I think it was hard, right? Because he wanted to move this stuff forward sooner rather than later. And I think a lot of other people were busy with other stuff. One big issue with proposing a soft fork in Bitcoin is you really need a lot of kind of the technical community to weigh in. And the technical community tends to be a bunch of people who are very busy with 20 projects because there's so much shit to fix in Bitcoin.
Right.
Right. And so, he wanted to make forward progress and felt like he was kind of like going to people and being like, here, look at this. Like, do you think we should do this? And people were like, maybe I don't have time to look at that, but And so he felt like he was kind of like not really making progress and not really kind of getting the kind of critical feedback he wanted. And then, he got very frustrated with that, understandably. But I think, the design also wasn't super composable with existing. It wasn't, it was kind of pretty generic, and I think it missed some of. So like now, James O'Byrne is trying to push for like basically OpVault, which is similar to this old OpTLove proposal. But then James also wants CTV, which was Jeremy's thing, as a part of OpVault. So like basically you can compose the two of them together. There's a lot of discussions on it.
Can I tell you something I want? And I'm sure I'm not the only person who does this, right? When I do a big Bitcoin transaction, say if I had to send Danny, I don't know, $20,000, sometimes I'm like, I'm going to send you $5 first.
Yeah.
Can you just confirm you got it? And then I've still got the same copy paste and I do it. I would love to be able to have a wallet or something whereby I, like over a certain amount, say it's over $1,000, all it does is sends $5 first. I phone up Danny. Danny got it. He said yes. And then I says yes. And he says the rest of the transaction. I don't have to actually create two transactions. Just does it in one.
Yeah.
Is that something that a wallet would do?
A wallet could do that. I mean, there's probably better protocols for that than this, right? Like you don't have to actually do a transaction in order to accomplish that. You just need some protocol by which your wallet communicates directly with Danny's wallet. And Danny can see like a thing at the top that says like, someone's trying to send you, $100,000. Like, it looks like this is correct. Like, yes, go. And then the wallets could communicate. There's room for this kind of protocol. It doesn't have to be an on-chain thing.
Because I'm sure I'm not the only. I bet you've done that.
I totally know what you mean. Like you're still nervous the second time.
Yeah,
it'd be nice if you almost sent the $5. You got a pop-up box saying, "Did this confirm?" You just say yes, and the rest goes. Or whatever.
Yeah, because I know I can't be the only one.
No, this is a common thing. Yeah,
but why is no one going to fix this? Come on, Corallo.
I think Bitcoin wallets tend to also be similarly overworked, and like there's, Bitcoin wallets. It's a tough game, right? Yeah. Like you historically haven't made any money on it, right? It's not like you get a cut of the transaction fees. With Lightning, you might. So maybe with Lightning, you have a better, more compelling business model. Which means, but historically, you don't make very much money on the wallets. You have a small team. Probably, the only real way you make money is by like selling shitcoins. Like you sell Bitcoin, but then really you make more money by selling shitcoins. So you integrate some brokerage service into your wallet, and then you have to add support for all these shitcoins because that's where you make the money. And so none of them have time to do these kinds of features. Some of the more like Ethereum specific ones have a little bit larger teams. They've raised VC money. Yeah. They have bigger business models, but they also have even more complexity because supporting Ethereum and 1 million contracts is even harder. And like you have to make that secure somehow, and that's not easy. So historically, Bitcoin wallets have had a real tough go of like getting enough resources to build out compelling features like that. Especially, if you want this kind of feature, you really need it to be a standard adopted by a lot of wallets. And so at one point, a few years back, we did try to create a like wallet standards group. And we had one meeting and it was great. We had a lot of really great discussion around all kinds of standards we wanted to build. And then we all went home and no one ever looked at it again or any of the things we agreed to.
Typical.
Because no one did follow up. I didn't have time to do follow up. Everybody else was super busy. It's mostly on me. I didn't do any follow up, but like I was busy.
It's all your fault, Matt.
Yeah. But this is the kind of thing where like I really, we really need to revive that.
Yeah.
And maybe we will with Lightning. Lightning's even worse. There's so many different overlapping protocols in Lightning, and everyone wants their Lightning wallet to support like zero amount invoices and Bolt 12 and LNURL, and now they want like Nostr Wallet Connect, and they want there's all these different protocols, and there's like this huge proliferation, and it's becoming a nightmare. I mean, it was like, your Lightning wallet here, can you scan this QR code? No, it didn't work. I don't support that protocol. Can you select this other protocol in your wallet to receive? It's nightmarish UX.
I mean, I very, very rarely have it in a base chain transaction where, an address isn't supported. It can very occasionally you have it come up, but it's very rare. It does happen on Lightning a lot.
It's frighteningly bad UX.
Yeah.
And so it's something we need to fix. But yeah, so, like every time you add one of these protocols to this compatibility matrix, then UX gets like an order of magnitude worse, because all of a sudden you have like no normal user is going to like scan a QR code and be like, oh, it gave me an error. What do I do? Like, that's off. Like, what? You just give up and you go use Litecoin, really. So, keeping that compatibility matrix down is something I worry a lot about.
Maybe Litecoin should have just been Lightning. Just create wallets that jumps between the two.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is like when you want to do like an atomic swap into Litecoin, you probably have to do an on-chain transaction in Bitcoin, and now you're fucked again. But yeah, I mean, so there needs. I think there is. We'll see what happens over the next few years, but I think there really is a lot of room to revive some of that kind of like wallet standards work.
We'll get on with
it. If someone wants to PM this and someone wants an awesome thing to do for Bitcoin, someone should run a wallet standards body. We can revive, what do we call it? We called it Send with a 3. You can revive Send and you can have another meeting.
Go on, Danny.
This is not a job for me.
But if someone wants to do that, I think that would actually be really huge, and you'd be able to push stuff like this. You'd be able to really cut down the compatibility matrix in Lightning, improve things. I think there's a lot of room. I think we might end up doing something similar in the Lightning world, not now, but some folks on our team might try to push something there. It's just a matter of finding somebody who has the time and the motivation to really do it. But I don't think this needs a hell of a lot of. This needs more organizational work. It needs like someone to wrangle people and pick a date and like book a conference room somewhere that you can like sit in. Like, it doesn't need, getting those people together. They'll like have good conversations. It really just needs someone to like just do the like organizational and like push it,
How are we doing on the recruitment of devs at the moment? And also adding to that, the loss of core devs over the last year.
Yeah. That's a good question. I think, Lightning's doing very well. On the Lightning side, Lightning Labs raised a year ago, maybe. And they were able to, L&D was pretty short-staffed before that. And I think now, they were able to hire a lot more people to work on L&D after that raise. And those people have finally kind of ran, it takes people a while to ramp up. Around a similar timeline, us on the LDK team, we hired 3 more. So we're now 7 full-time engineers on LDK, plus some other folks doing our huge grant program and yada, yada. The Core Lightning team, I think, also hired around the similar time. I don't know where they are now. I know some of their folks that they hired were doing like research projects. I think Eclair is similarly doing fairly well. I think they did a raise not too long ago as well. So like on the Lightning side, we're doing well. Like all the different groups maintaining one of the 4 big Lightning implementations has either raised over the last year or got more budget or whatever, and has hired for it, and everyone seems to be doing great. So I don't worry about that. On the Bitcoin Core side, it's complicated. I think it's useful to talk about Bitcoin Core in kind of a historical perspective. So, there were a bunch of new core devs in late 2010, early 2011. That's when Bitcoin first made it to the front page of Slashdot. It made it to the front page of Slashdot like 3 times, I think, late 2010, early 2011. And so that got a lot of geeks into Bitcoin. That's why you see a lot of people who kind of like heard about Bitcoin first in early 2011. It was mostly either directly or indirectly via Slashdot.
What was it for you?
I heard about it via a podcast I watched regularly where they'd heard about it on Slashdot.
Right, okay.
So indirectly or directly, that it kind of started filtering through certain geek communities in early 2011. And so you saw a bunch of kind of core devs get involved throughout 2011. And, slowly more and more, but not a huge growth through like all the block size wars. And, there continued to be some, but kind of a lot of the kind of core folks who have been working on Bitcoin Core for a long time worked on it from 2011, 2012, 2010 through the block size wars. And that was a stressful period, obviously. That was not a fun few years, but everyone, I think, working on Bitcoin Core at the time felt it was a little existential, right? It was like this thing that you'd been working on for multiple years by that point, and like you wanted to see it succeed. And so like you were going to fight like hell to, have the outcome you wanted through the block size wars. And that's why they were so stressful and it was so existential and there was a lot of angst around it. After SegWit and after SegWit 2x kind of face planted, a lot of us had a lot of like side projects we wanted to work on, either Bitcoin or non-Bitcoin. But, just a lot of us had like other Bitcoin projects we wanted to build that weren't necessarily like working on Bitcoin Core. Whether it be, Miniscript and descriptors, or whether it be like Bitcoin Fiber and eventually Stratum v2, or whether it be Lightning stuff or whatever. So a lot of people kind of stepped back a little bit, and that created a vacuum, right? You had a lot of longtime contributors step back around a similar time, and at the same time, a lot of new folks wanted to get into Bitcoin Core and started contributing, but there wasn't a large kind of long-time contributor base to like help mentor and help really, build that out. And so that created a lot of problems in Core, kind of in the year or 2 or 3 after SegWit and after the block size wars kind of resolved. And that, I think that took a long time to filter through. Like it took, again, because you had that kind of like sucking out of old folks who knew the code base well and could help mentor, it was hard to grow the new talent. There was a lot of new talent coming in that wanted to grow, and it was really hard to help them grow. And so that really created a lot of problems for a while. I think over the last few years, that new talent has figured it out. And so we see, great new people working on Core. Gloria is now a maintainer, I think. I'm blanking on names, and someone's going to yell at me for not mentioning them. I'm sorry.
Did I meet Gloria in London? I met someone in London.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I think that talent that got involved either then or not long thereafter has finally figured it out and finally learned the code base well enough and either found mentors or just figured it out on their own or whatever, has been working on it long enough to really grok what's going on and add really valuable contribution. At the same time, some other older folks have gotten more involved again. Peter Willa has gotten more involved again.
Cool.
And I think a few other people have gotten more involved again as well. And so that has also helped. And so I'm not that worried about it. I obviously like the Craig Wright drama and that crap where it's just frivolous garbage, but like frivolous garbage that's, still legal threats and harassment's not great to deal with, right? Especially, courts are not well suited to dealing with someone who's just going to flat out lie in all of their, correspondence with the court. Like they're just not well suited to handle that. They expect some level of honesty. And so working through the like, no, that's a lie. No, that's a lie. No, that's a lie in court just takes a lot of resources and a lot of time. And so, those kinds of things do stress out some developers. And also like, the Bitcoin Puritan crowd is obnoxious sometimes. And it's like over stupid crap. It's not very often that you see, I think there was some interesting debate around like Taproot activation. I wasn't a fan of a lot of the takes, but at least they were takes that like had some semblance of like a strong argument behind it, an argument you could stand behind. And then there's a lot of like Bitcoin Puritan crowd who get mad about like a variable name change in Bitcoin Core. And you're just like, how do you expect anyone to want to work on this? Yeah. Or you have Bitcoin Puritan crowd running around screaming about how no one should work on Bitcoin Core, the code base should be frozen and no one should touch it again for the next 2 decades. Never mind that there's like, some denial of service security fix in every release because like this stuff is really freaking hard and people are still figuring it out, 15 years later or whatever it is now. And so like dealing with that kind of crap is really annoying. And so it's understandable that there's people who kind of flame out, let's say, and just like get frustrated and don't want to work on it. But at the same time, I am encouraged by the kind of newfound enthusiasm that I think, and I don't really work on core anymore, so it's hard. I am a little bit of an outsider, but at least the folks that I talk to who do seem to have and also find kind of this newfound enthusiasm that exists within the project that we haven't seen since maybe before the block size wars, where there's really just like new blood who gets it, who's excited about Bitcoin again, and isn't just like old and jaded and annoyed about like everything. So I think Bitcoin Core is doing fine.